Well, in the interest of keeping things on track, I decided I'm going to start exactly on time. So welcome everybody. This is the upstairs art space, space that is adjacent to the PA office. And at break time, if you haven't had a chance to take a look, you're welcome to wander into the office behind you and to the left. So my talk is another milestone, 10 reasons to celebrate the last 10 years of parapsychological research. It's another milestone because, well, I'm a little ahead of myself. On Monday, the PA turned 60. And a little bit about how the PA was founded. It was proposed by J.B. Bryan at a workshop in parapsychology held at Duke University. And they decided to take advantage of all the people present there to form a professional society for the first time. And from the very start, emphasis was placed on the international and professional character of the association. I would say that we still maintain that international character, with only about half our members being in the U.S. and the other half worldwide. And we had a goal of promoting. They had the goal of promoting better communication between scientists working in the field. Nowadays, it's a lot easier to do, but you can imagine in 1957 that conferences and in-person meetings were extremely important. They formulated the mission of the PA back then. It is the same mission today, and that is to advance parapsychology as a science, to disseminate knowledge of the field, and to integrate the findings of parapsychology with those of other branches of science. Now, the reason I call this another milestone is because the 50th was a milestone. And it also happens to be my first encounter with the PA. The 50th anniversary was my first year as a member. It was also my first PA convention, where I actually presented research as well. And because of this, the last 10 years feel like my story. And so I want to share a little bit of that with you. So I did drive to the 50th anniversary panel, the convention, which was held in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I drove my 1997 Monte Carlo and had to ditch it shortly after. It was a heck of a drive. And I took this picture, and this picture is of a panel that took place at that convention called 3 Parapsychological Association Goals, a 50th anniversary assessment. And this was the idea of our president at the time, Rex Stanford, and he asked that Eberhard Bauer, Stanley Krippner, and Ed May, who's with us today, each take one of those mission points and do an assessment of how we're doing after 50 years. And then we had Jessica Utz also as a chair or commentator on the panel. And so the first was advanced parapsychology as a science, and this was Eberhard Bauer. And the points of his portion of the panel, he said that parapsychology is still in its infancy because there's a lack of consensus on basic issues. Namely, we haven't decided yet on what the scope of the field is, or the structure and the strength of the effects under study. And we had yet to find any solid, repeatable findings by which we could draw some conclusions about the process of how psi works. However, he found some promise in the field of clinical parapsychology, which was starting to gain some ground. And also suggested that as parapsychologists, we align ourselves a little closer to the field of quantum physics, that there was some promise there. Stanley Krippner took on how well are we doing at disseminating knowledge of the field. This was probably the most depressing part of the panel. He said that professional journals had gone belly up or were behind schedule, and that there were closing labs and not enough research being done to fill the pages of these journals. That he cited low subscription rates and high production costs, and also noticed that skeptic publications were faring so much better. But yet, we also had the internet, but that was a mixed bag because the quality of the information on the internet is uneven, obviously. And then finally we had Ed, who handled the integrating the findings of parapsychology with those of other branches of science. And his focus was on technology, and that we need to work harder to develop competency in the technology that is available to us. But then pointed to a place where maybe we were doing a pretty decent job, and that was in stimulus response and presentiment studies. And pointed out how using technology was allowing us to bypass the reporting problem of previous research when it came to free response tests like the non-stone. Overall, though, the panel was not the most optimistic I've ever been to. And yet, I still decided to stick around. And so 4 months later, I had this blog called Public Parapsychology, and it says Annalisa trades in her blog for a job. A few months after the PA convention in Halifax, I went to the Institute of Noetic Sciences just for a tour. I was in the area visiting friends, and I found an opportunity to maybe make a public parapsychology blog post about ions. And so, there's me at the sign of the entrance, and I got to meet Dean Radin and his wife Susie. And then here I'm in the sending room of a Gonsfeld experiment, trying to have the awesome photo. Of course, this is what I look like a lot these days. So interesting thing about this is that Susie was the executive secretary and business manager of the PA at the time, and little did I know that she was looking to pass the baton. And so I had aspirations of being a professional blogger. Doesn't work out so much when you make a blog about parapsychology. And so that wasn't going so great, and one day I get the email that I was being offered a job. And I thought that the executive secretary meant that I was going to be licking stamps and stuffing envelopes. And so I didn't hesitate to say yes, of course. But as Susie started sending me boxes and boxes of files and turning over accounts to my name, I realized that I had taken on much more. And so I needed to clear a space for all these files and a space to handle the business of the PA. I have a very small house, so I found a space in my basement. And the PA office, so to speak, lived in my basement for about 5 years. So the countdown begins, number 10. You might ask why, when the heading is the PA established its first brick and mortar office. Why are we looking at a picture of Mario Varvaglis? Funny story. So I was in the Seattle convention of 2009, and afterwards we went on our field trip. We all went on a boat. And I was talking with Mario on the boat and telling him about the basement office that I had put together. And he looked at me very seriously and he said, "Annalisa, promise me that you will never show pictures." So instead of pictures of the first PA office, you get to see Mario Varvaglis on a boat. But then eventually, one of my, another profession of mine is that I teach music. And I teach piano. I actually teach piano in this space. And back around 2014, 2015, I needed to expand my own teaching business outside of my home. And that provided an opportunity to look for an office suite where the PA could also have its own space. And in 2015, we established our first office. It was a little bit down the street on High Street, and I had, these two are one little small room. You can still see a lot of those items in the PA closet back there. And then we had a small conference room that we were also allowed to share with other people on that floor. But after about 14 months, that space was no longer meeting the needs of my music teaching business, and so that's how we ended up here. And because now the PA had a brick and mortar establishment, I started inviting more boxes of files, because what I wanted to do then was sort of bring back together the archives of the PA, and we're talking about proceedings, newsletters, research in parapsychology. And so I started making calls, and the membership answered. Right here we see, I was celebrating that we finally got a full, complete line of research in parapsychology. lot of our newsletters right in here. This is at the old office. This is something I've been doing now for about 2 years, and I'm really close to completing it. I think I got about 5 to 10 volumes of proceedings that I'm still looking for. Otherwise, everything's complete. And along with our reason number 10 to celebrate the last 10 years of parapsychological research, we should celebrate that this office is in Columbus. Columbus is the second largest city in the Midwest, next to Chicago. The 14th, second largest city in the Midwest. Did I say the U.S.? Midwest, okay. 14th largest in the USA. It is within a few miles of USA's largest university, largest in the sense of land, but it also has the third largest student population at 65,000 students. And Columbus gets multiple awards for being an intelligent city. If you look it up, it happens a lot. Reason for that, various commissions have awarded us for whatever reason. They often cite, we have a strong public library system here. We have the highest concentration of Fortune 1000 companies in any metropolitan area. And these committees cited an effective collaboration between government, business, and academia. And so we run things pretty well in Columbus. Reason number 9, increased participation in the AAAS. For those of you who don't know, the AAAS is the American Association for the Advancement of Science. It is the world's largest scientific society. It is a publisher of Science magazine. And the PA has been affiliated with the AAAS since 1969. Way back when, there were 9 symposia on parapsychological topics presented at national meetings between 1970 and 1993. Things took a bit of a hiatus, but in the last 10 years, we have seen 3 symposia on retrocausation at AAAS regional meetings. The PA has put more attention into sending a representative to the annual meetings of affiliates every year. Usually that's me, sometimes it's Jessica. And in the process of attending meetings, I've also gotten to know the AAAS staff. And recently, the PA was invited to pilot test a site that the AAAS built called Trellis. And what that is a digital platform that connects the scientific community that they have built from the ground up. It's a little bit like LinkedIn, but with tools built in that are supposed to help with scientific collaboration. And also, unlike other social media networks, the discussion is very focused. So you get a higher level of conversation than you would at, say, Facebook or at LinkedIn. Here's an example of what one of our pages. We have 3 groups at Trellis. One of those is a Parapsychological Association has just a general public face at Trellis. And then we also have a private group for the PA members. And then a 3rd group for PA students. Reason number 8, launch of the Minefield Bulletin. Minefield Bulletin is now in its 9th year. It was, for 8 years it was under the editorship of Ethel Gardenia at Lund University in Sweden. And it features theoretical research and historical articles, and regular columns by the PA president. We share news in the field, and articles about researchers and laboratories around the world, and biographies of articles that are relevant to the study of parapsychology. Now, the PA has had many newsletters in the past, and some that have even rivaled the length of time that we've been offering Minefield. One of the nice things about this publication, though, is that it runs at about 30 to 40 pages, and so it does have original research articles in it. And we're starting to see some of those articles get cited in the scientific literature, so that's always nice for a small publication like ours. All right, reason number 7. Just moving right along. Increasing publications in mainstream journals. This is the first page of my article in Minefield. This was a 22-part series published called Articles Relevant to Parapsychology in Journals of Various Fields. And in that 22-part series, we had a total of 1,370 fairly recent articles, and by fairly recent, I mean the last 10 years, in a variety of mostly peer-reviewed periodicals in the scientific mainstream. Unfortunately, the person who put together this column, Gerd Hubelman, recently passed away. But he cited in one of his last installments that he felt that this bibliography was evidencing a slowly increasing recognition, if not acceptance, of parapsychologically relevant themes in the literature of more than a few orthoscientific fields of knowledge. I think I agree with him. Number 6. I think we can celebrate that there's increasing educational opportunities in the UK. I wish that was the case in the US. But in the UK, they're really gaining some ground over there. Over here is a listing of universities that have opportunities for education in parapsychology. I have 11 of them. That's what's on the PA website. I think there might actually be even a few more. A couple of milestones for our friends in the United Kingdom. In 2008, the leading pre-university level psychology examining board, called the AQA, introduced an anomalistic psychology option to their syllabus, and 15% of students took that option. In 2011, the government-funded body responsible for implementing teaching excellence in the UK, the Higher Education Academy, recognized the growing interest of parapsychology as a taught course and helped to establish a psychology special interest group called Teaching Anomalistic Psychology and Parapsychology. And finally, there are 11 universities that teach some combination of parapsychology and anomalistic psychology as an option at the undergraduate level, and are reaching an estimated 1,000 students per year. Okay, so number 5. I think that we're seeing an increasing professionalism of clinical parapsychology, especially in the last 10 years. And I think that's evidenced in part by some of the landmark meetings that are happening devoted to meeting with experts in this field. Tim Kramer, who's with us today, is responsible for a few of those meetings. And there was one in 2007 in the Netherlands, 2010 in Germany, 2012 in Paris, France, and in 2017, just a few weeks ago, in Heidelberg, Germany. And then Christine Simmons-Moore, another one of our board members, organized 2 meetings, one of those in England and another one in Durham, North Carolina, within the last decade. I might be missing some.
No, it's okay.
Did I get it? Okay. All right, so, wow, I'm talking really fast. All right, so I'm going to have to slow down a little bit. Reason number 4. Meta-analyses of presentiment studies. This is 2012. Mossbridge et al., that would be Patrizio Tresoldi, Jessica Utz, Julie Mossbridge, published a meta-analysis of presentiment studies that took place between 1978 and 2010. And it combined 26 of 49 available studies looking at physiological effects of future stimuli. It calculated a 1 in 400 billion chance that the effects are due to chance. And of course the major point is that it was published in Frontiers in Psychology, which is a mainstream journal. That was followed just a few years later by experiments by Daryl BEM at Cornell University. He had a paper published in 2012 in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, which is a high-impact journal in psychology, called Feeling the Future, Experimental Evidence for Anomalous Retroactive Influences on Cognition and Affect. And this study consisted of 9 experiments, over 1,000 subjects, 15 years of research at Cornell, 8 of those 9 experiments produced statistically significant evidence for precognition. Those experiments had the theme of time-reversing well-established psychological effects so that the individual's responses are obtained before the putatively causal stimulus of events would occur. So, for example, students or participants might take a memory test, but when they show up to the lab, the first thing they do is take the test, and then they're allowed to study for it afterward. And which suggests that maybe, you know, if you miss the opportunity to study for your next exam, perhaps studying afterward might help you out. Now, what was so genius about Daryl's experiments are that they were designed to be simple statistically and easy to replicate. So he was taking well-established psychology experiments and doing them backwards, so the statistics were already accepted. And the way he designed the package, he did it so that you could do this with just a computer and one experimenter. And because he provided that package, it made it possible for pretty close replications to happen. And they did. In 2014, a meta-analysis was published that collectively examined the results of 90 replications from 33 laboratories in 14 countries with over 12,000 participants, and overall showed a positive effect. So, number 2, I love number 2. This is a call for an open, informed study of all aspects of consciousness that appeared on my birthday in 2014. It was quite a birthday present to wake up to this. So, this was published in Frontiers. I was supposed to be able to read this through here, but in Frontiers of, oh my gosh, I can't read it. Frontiers of Neuroscience, which is the #1 most cited journal in psychology, and it is also the #1 most cited open access neuroscience journal. And I pulled this page a few days ago. This article that I'm going to brief read in just a moment has had almost 50,000 views. And so there's a number of tenets in this article. The first one, actually I'm going to get to the punchline first. This article was signed by 100 professors. So there's several tenets about parapsychological research, and then 100 university professors signed their name to it. So the first tenet is that research on parapsychological phenomena is being carried out by academics trained in the scientific method and has been for some time. By the way, this is not exactly their language, this is my reduction of it, but it's very similar. Also, that positive results from parapsychological studies have been published in an array of peer-reviewed academic journals. It's funny that we have to state that as a fact and have 100 people sign it, because a lot of times when you tell people that same fact, they're like, no. But it's true. And significant support for the existence of psi phenomena has not disappeared under increased experimental controls. It gets hotter. Research practices in the field of parapsychology, i.e. meta-analysis, trial registries, and null results reporting, further discourage the idea that these results are due to chance. And like other studies of complex human behavior in psychology and medicine, the effect sizes are typically small and cannot be reproduced on demand. Finally, developing theories of psi phenomena do not necessarily violate the known laws of nature or physics, especially giving consideration to modern theories in physics and growing evidence for quantum effects in biological systems. And like I said, this is signed by 100 university professors from over 20 different countries. Happy birthday to me, right? So, finally, drum roll please. The #1 reason why we should celebrate the last 10 years of parapsychological research Emerging Theories of Psi. And under this category, there are two books here that I think should be required reading for everybody in this field. The first one is First Sight Theory by Jim Carpenter. And the second one is volume 2 of Ed May and Mark Waha's Extrasensory Perception, Theories of Psi. Now, in First Sight, Jim Carpenter's, it's a theory and a model. It is informed by presentiment studies, BEM's precognition research, process-oriented psi research of the 1960s and 70s, along with a lot of mainstream psych. Should have brought out the book. It's a thick one. And it is full of testable hypotheses that has exactly to do with research that hasn't been done and is currently being done. And Ed's book provides a compendium of current theories from multiple researchers. I'm a big fan of Jim's theory, but there are others to consider. And so between those two books, people often ask me, where does the field need to go? If you had all the money in the world, what would you do to make parapsychology awesome? And, I mean, it's already awesome. But what I would do is I would make sure that every professional and associate member of the PA had these two books. I would have a meeting where we could discuss it and chart a future course. So, I'm way ahead of schedule. That is all I have for you. So right now, I'm happy to take your questions.
I have a question. You have probably the only collection on the planet of all the rest in peace parapsychology RIPs. Do you have plans like what David and Julie Rousseau did for the SPR library, putting it online for searchable? That would be really
absolutely
wonderful.
Yes,
Get them to do it for you. They know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, I've talked to the PA's webmaster, who actually might be making an appearance later today. Because the PA board has decided to make those publicly available, we can actually unleash some of the apps and tools in Google to get it done very quickly, very searchable, and very easy to do.
Including proceedings, which are very possible.
It's all going to be on there.
Yay.
That and possibly more, but I'm not at liberty to discuss that. Any other questions? Yes?
I just wanted to totally thank you for everything you've done for this organization. That's really amazing, your contributions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Why do you think the educators in the UK are so much more open to putting parapsychology into curriculum than here in the US?
I wish I knew the answer to that, but I can elaborate a little bit more. There was a chair of parapsychology that was established at the University of Edinburgh back in, I want to say, 1980s. Am I right? And we had a researcher by the name of Bob Morris, who was the chair of that program. And he had goals for his program that made it really easy for his graduate students to both do their thesis involving a parapsychological topic, but also be able to get employed afterward. And that formula was that for your thesis, 2/3 of that thesis needed to be on an aspect of psychology or parapsychology that would be considered a quote-unquote mainstream. And then the other third was then allowed to be parapsychological. So, like I said, it would make you employable. It would also make you knowledgeable in parapsychology. And it also had a way of, I think, showing academia, at least in the UK, about how how parapsychology is relevant to mainstream science, because the students were forced to make that connection very early. And his program was very successful, and he had a lot of graduate students, and those students went on to get jobs and proliferate throughout the country.
May I add to that?
Yes,
A little background material. One thing that Bob Morris did, which was unique, he became president of the British Psychological Society as well. He was well respected. And when he first joined the Kersler unit at Edinburgh, they were ashamed of this, but they had to take the money because Arthur Kersler put a big pile of cash in there. And by the time Bob Morris untimely passed away, they were bragging about their unit as being the best in the world. So he probably more than any of us did more to legitimize this particular activity. An amazing character.
Yes. Yes.
You mentioned the European schools, but you didn't mention the U.S. schools.
No. There are a few, actually. There's Sophia University. Will teach students. Well, let me back up. There are universities that have programs where they do research in parapsychology, but they don't accept students. They're just research-only departments. One of those is at the University of Virginia. And Daryl BEM, when he's retired from Cornell, but when he was at Cornell, he did not teach undergraduates. And there used to be a program at Princeton as well, but there was no teaching curriculum associated with that. There are several programs though in the U.S. where they do teach. Like I said, one of those is Sophia. Another one is Saybrook University. And I'm forgetting another one, but then
There's one in West Georgia.
University of West Georgia, yes. And they have quite a nice department there, quite a few students. Anybody else? No?
West Georgia has institutional support for work in parapsychology.
Do they?
Yeah, Christine Simmons Moore got tenure in part for her work in parapsychology.
I didn't know that.
And the department chair accompanied her to the BEAL conference, very much in favor of research parapsychology. And the chancellor of the university is in support of the work as well. It's a really major step forward.
Well, if there's no further questions, I think I'll go ahead and end a little bit early. Ed May is going to be our next speaker. And until he is ready for his presentation, I'd like to invite you to grab a cup of coffee or some tea and enjoy the exhibit we have here on exceptional experiences. Thank you.
I think there's an aids to help you stay awake for the next hour. Did I just start by doing HTML?
Give me a moment.
Which one?
Stay in, Mark.